Recording in
is to give
progress.
voters an overview of the articles on the special town meeting warrant, so they are better prepared to attend special town meeting on Monday, October 17th, 7 p.m. the Westford Academy Gym. This event is being recorded and live streamed by WestfordCAT and will be available for later viewing on YouTube or the WestfordCAT website. Just a few words about the League. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is a nonpartisan political organization and does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. You can learn more at lwv.westford.org. Also on our website, there's a series of short videos explaining various aspects of town meeting. We have a guide to town meeting and a page giving you more details on the debt exclusion articles. The format of tonight's event, we'll go through the warrant articles in the order they are listed in the motions guide or in the warrant. Each article will be explained by a town official who I'll introduce as we get to it. You can follow along with the motions document, which will be available on the screen. You may ask questions via the Q&A button on Zoom. It's near the bottom. We'll take questions for each article as we go along, and I'll monitor the chat for both questions and comments and try to get you an answer. This is your time to ask questions. We encourage you to ask them. This is a time you can ask them and not have to get up in front of a microphone at town meeting. So you can learn not only about the articles, but about how town meeting works in general. And along those lines, I'd first like to introduce Angela Harkness, our town moderator, who will give us some information about the logistics of special town meeting. Angela. Hopefully she can be.
Oh, hang on a second.
She can get promoted.
Yep, she's. Wait for it.
Thank you. I love being promoted. Thank you, Laura, for allowing me to say a few words. And also, of course, thank you to the League for sponsoring this informative event. As you indicated, in a couple of days, we'll have our special town meeting starting at 7 p.m. on Monday, October 17th. And for the first time, we'll be at Westford Academy in the Gymnasium. There'll be plenty of parking and plenty of room. I think it'll be a good move for us. I like to take every opportunity I'm given to remind everyone that town meeting is the legislative body of Westford, and it's up to the voters at town meeting to decide how our tax dollars are spent and the local rules that we live by. So I hope that folks can please make the time to come and vote on these important issues, which you'll hear the details about in just a few minutes. We're starting at 7, and I would think that we will probably be done by 9. So it's about 2 hours out of your day, and I really hope that you can make the time to do that. Laura, do we have the diagram of the room, which I would like to show folks, if we can put that up, so you'll have an idea of how things are going to be set up.
And while that's being brought up, I'll just point out we are using the clickers again.
Yes, we'll be using the clickers again for any vote that requires a count or where a count is requested. On the more nominal issues, we'll still likely vote by voice. Great. So there's the diagram of how the Westford Academy Gym will be set up. You'll be entering through the front doors of the school, and if you walk straight back, you'll hit the gym. You'll enter at the door to the left, and you can see in the back of the room there will be the check-in tables where you'll check in as a voter and get your clicker. And then there are chairs and bleachers set up for the voters and a separate section for the department head chairs and any guests. At the front of the room will be the stage for myself and the town clerk and IT, who will be running the clicker voting count, as well as the tables for school committee, finance committee, the select board, and the town manager. When you leave, you'll leave through that exit, which is to your left on the screen, and you can see the box there that says clicker return, which is where you'll return your clickers. I just do want to point out, children are welcome at town meeting as long as they can be quiet and not disturb the meeting. But if you would like an alternative to bringing your kids where you can spread out a little more, we'll also have alternative family seating in a room across the hall where the proceedings will be broadcast. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I think it's pretty straightforward, and I hope to see everyone there.
Great, thank you. Looks like a great setup, so look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so I think we are ready to start going through the warrant. Remember, if you have any questions, use the Q&A to ask them, and we'll try to get you an answer. So the first one is Article 1. This is an easy one. Approve unpaid bills from previous fiscal years. And I believe this is going to be dismissed. No unpaid bills left, so that's always good. Article 2 will approve fiscal year 2023 budget adjustments. So Dan O'Donnell, who's our finance director for the town, is going to talk to us about these adjustments.
Sure, we have 10 different supplementals here. I'll just go through them briefly. The first one is for the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, $37,265. This is basically to replenish the reserve fund. They had made 2 previous appropriations this year. One for the library for further cost estimating, and another one to hire an executive search firm for the new town manager. So this will bring that balance back up to $125,000. For the assessor's expenses, the chief assessor is requesting funds for appraisal on the Westford Regency. They're debating the valuation of the tax assessment, and we need some assistance in fighting that. For the town clerk, mail-in voting is causing additional expense for them. They have 3 different elections that they have to send out postage for mail-in voting. So 10,500 of that 16,000 is for that. And then for the November 8th special election, they're requesting $5,635 for printing of the ballot. The police personal services, we have 5 officers obtaining their master's degree, which was not known at the time that the FY23 was published. That was about half the amount here. The other half is additional mandated state training for Post C and Municipal Police Training Committee training. So the police expenses for $3,800, it's for a piece of policy management software called PMAM to help them address accreditation and Post C needs. The fire department personal services is all for overtime. So was that a question? Nope, okay. Is all for overtime. We had 4 people out injured and 4 people that we needed to hire at the beginning of the year, so the overtime was running a little bit higher than normal. For the sealer weights and measures, that we had a long-standing agreement with the state that they would come in and do all the measurements within town. However, they stopped providing that service for us, so Jody and Eric were able to get NIMCOG to perform those services for us. We have $3,000 already appropriated, so this $4,700 is for a supplemental to that budget, and that's only for half the year. The budget for next year is going to be $15,524.
Oh, could you just tell people what NIMCOG is?
Yes, Eric, I'm stumbling on this one. It's the
Northern Middlesex Council of Governments.
Thank you.
Okay,
So for next month, the Westford Public Schools for $76,500. They plan to use these funds for decodable text for all the elementary schools and to provide a unified district-wide curriculum for our growing ELL student population. And if any funds are remaining, they plan on putting projectors in some of the elementary gyms. Then for recycling, this one's sort of a wild card for us. We have been getting assessed a fuel surcharge the first 3 months of the year, about $2,000 per month, which we didn't budget for. And then also the paper market crash. So we have been receiving money each month for the sale of the commodities. However, in September, we were charged $7,000 as a processing fee. So we're keeping a close eye on this. We may need another supplemental at the annual town meeting, but we want to not request too much at this time, just in case the market reverses itself. And lastly, down below, we're requesting $40,000 for the fire department expenses. This is so they can purchase new IV pumps, other small equipment, powered suction units, training mannequins, and other various things that they had requested.
Great, and thank you. I don't see any questions about that. If you think of anything, feel free to throw it in the Q&A. So we will move on to Article 3, approve fiscal year 2023 budget transfers. And Andrea Parrish-Sweet, who's chair of the select board, is going to tell us about this.
Thank you, Laura, and let me once again thank the League for doing this, as they do it for every town and special town meeting. This really reflects, if folks remember, a final sort of readjustment to the reorganization of our public safety. I'm sorry, not our public safety, our public works department. My mistake. As folks remember, when we promoted Steve Cronin to the director of the DPW, we also reorganized the department, and an accounting function that was being done in that department was moved to our accounting department, and that just reflects that transfer.
Great. This is no additional expenditures. It's just moving it between accounts.
It's just moving it between accounts.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so takes us to Article 4, to approve fiscal year 2023 capital appropriations. And this will be Dan again, and any department heads who need to chime in if it's their department. And Dan, before you start, if you could just tell people what capital appropriations, why these are different than other appropriations?
These are outside the normal budget. We typically apply free cash to make these one-time purchases, so they're outside the operating budget.
Thank you.
So we do have 5 appropriations here. I was going to go through and give a general overview. If there's any specific questions, we do have the department heads ready to answer those questions. So the first one is for an electric vehicle for the assessor's department. The assistant assessor is usually up performing inspections for about 4 hours a day using his own vehicle. So we're requesting a vehicle for the department to use, and of course it can be shared with all of town hall. For the public buildings, this is to install a fence next to the police station lot and the adjacent parcel on 4 Lincoln Street. It's to build a fence and cut back some of the trees that are dropping sap on the cruisers and actually ruining the finish on those and people's individual cars. The building department is requesting $31,359 for a new vehicle, a hybrid. This is a Ford Escape. It's replacing a 2008 vehicle that they currently have. The current vehicle is out of commission. It's rusted through in the bottom. And the reason we don't have an electric vehicle here is because the building department needs something that's a bit higher up so it doesn't bottom out on construction sites. So we did look for the electric vehicle and it was not available. For engineering, they have the next 2 projects here. The first is for the Beaver Brook Bridge construction services. This is part of a $2 million project that the state is paying for to repair the Beaver Brook Bridge. Their estimated construction will begin once school is out in June and go into September of next year. Then lastly, we have funding for the Boston Road design amendment. It's coming from a variety of sources, including free cash, stormwater enterprise, and water enterprise, because it's a combined public works project. You also see up here, we have $1,855.70 coming from TNC funding. It's actually money that the state sends us for public works improvements. And it's from ride shares that take place in Westford. So, from Uber or Lyft or anything like that. So we do have to appropriate that money each year and report back. So all that money is going towards the non-participating costs for the Boston Road.
Okay, it looks like mostly, looks like mostly design at this point.
Yeah, this is design. This is part of the town's cost. And again, the state is coming in and performing a $12 million public works project, which Paul Starrett has labeled as the largest public works project that Westford has ever seen.
But that 12 million is going to be paid for by the state?
By the state,
Or-
yep.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds like it's going to be a big one. So great. Thank you. Okay, now we are going to move on to Article 5. Appropriate funding for the construction of a new municipal building located at 51 Main Street. We have Tom Mahana, who's chair of the Permanent Town Building Committee, here with us, and he's going to go through the presentation that will be shown at special town meeting. So you can sort of get a little preview of it here. And again, any questions, put them in the Q&A. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm actually going to let Andrea, she's going to start off the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Laura.
I just want to start the presentation by giving just a really quick overview in terms of why we are proposing this to town meeting and requesting that it go forward. Everybody, as well as everybody knows, the old fire station has now been vacant for several years and is in a very deteriorating and rundown condition. The 51 Main Street is being proposed to address several, in fact, multitude of issues and significant issues here in town that need to be addressed. And they include right now the lack of space for departments and personnel. We have recently hired a sustainability coordinator and a wellness coordinator, neither one of whom have adequate space. We have an IT department that is in inadequate space, as well as a veteran services officer who is in a space that is not easily accessible to some of our veterans. Next, we have a need for a large community meeting space. The current one, when we do go back to using it, and only holds approximately 20 to 35 people comfortably in the room. And many of our meetings, select board meetings, conservation commission meetings, finance committee meetings that are held in that room are often attended by many town residents, and the overflow, they need to stand in the hall. So that will address that. In addition, it will be used as a training room for the police. The building as it's being proposed really is going to be a showpiece of a building here in Westford and hopefully for other communities. It is, being developed in connection with, the best uses for energy savings, sustainability, and the goal really is to make it as energy efficient and as sustainable building as possible. And finally, I think people should bear in mind, we have already spent close to $900,000 in simple design, preparation, construction, evaluation, et cetera, of this building. And we don't want to lose the funds that we have already put into this building if we don't go forward. So with that introduction, I'm going to let Tom fill in the details.
Thank you, Andrea. Next slide, please. Okay, as Andrea mentioned, this building is replacing the existing fire station that's been vacant now since 2018. The building itself is not salvageable due to its current condition. Next slide. The project actually began, we started planning this project back over 7 years ago with the planning of a new fire station. The first actual study for this project, professional study, was funded in 2017. And we hired contacts to complete the feasibility study. And it's important to note that at the completion of that study recommended a 2-story, 9,100 square foot building, as Andrea mentioned, with the features that we talked about before. You'll see that now the final design is very close to what that recommendation was. So in addition, we have now had 4 appropriations, as Andrea mentioned, for this project to date, beginning 2017, also follow-up meetings in 18, 19, and 20 that have appropriated close to $900,000 for this project. Next slide. Just a little bit more about the details of this project. And in addition to the 4 town meetings, recently the select board also appropriated $92,000 in ARPA funds for this project. If this project moves forward, we hope to be completed by early 2024. Next slide. Andrea has mentioned the key components here, really 6 identified key needs for this project. The marquee being a large meeting room / community room, training room, along with the office space for these 5 listed departments. And you can see here in this photo to the right, this is part of the identified need. The newly created wellness coordinator, the animal control officer currently occupies space in town hall. They've taken over the downstairs conference room. Next slide. Meeting room. This is a picture of a typical meeting, in-person meeting back when we were still having them. The existing building currently, or meeting room, only holds about 20 people. And it was not uncommon to have people standing both in the lobby and around the edges of the room. It just is not an adequate space to conduct typical meetings that we have in that space. Next slide. So just some pictures here of the technology department, their current conditions that they're working under. It's in a former fire station in Forge Village. It has a multitude of issues, including accessibility issues, and along with just inadequate storage space and conditions for not only the servers, the equipment, but the staff that work there. Next slide. Veteran Services is located in the Millennium Building. In order for people to access this space or this office, the closest parking is over 100 yards away. And for some of the folks that need to meet with the Veteran Service agent, this can be difficult to access that office and walk as far as they have to. Next slide. Facilities is also Millennium. They share their space with the Veteran Service agent. They're also in need for more space due to their growing department. Next slide. This just shows quickly the site plan where this building will be located in the town hall complex, along with a number of spaces. There's existing 135 parking spaces in the complex, about 142 proposed when the project is complete. We also did a parking study as part of this project, and it determined that there is adequate space parking currently in town center for this new building. Next slide. Just some floor plans for the 2-story building showing kind of the layout of the building. The total building size is 9,500 square feet. Next slide. The new community room / training room. This is a rendering of how this would look. It'd be a multifunctional space with 2 retractable partitions. It'd be located on the 1st floor. Seating capacity of up to 100. It would replace the training room and the client dispatch center, and also be able to use for not only meetings, but also training purposes and functions for other departments. Next slide. We've collaborated closely. Our committee has collaborated closely with the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee. And these are some of the metrics and the goals by not only our committee, but their committee for this project. And, as Andrea mentioned at the beginning, we really want all committees and everybody involved would really like this to become a showpiece for the town on energy conservation and sustainability. Next slide. Just summary here of the project costs. Construction costs are just over $12 million. You can see how this breaks down with direct construction costs along with all the additional soft costs. Estimated annual operating maintenance costs is just again, conservative estimates at this time, but just under $50,000. These costs, by the way, the construction costs have been escalated to summer 2023 when we anticipate the project will start. Next slide. And there's just a summary of to date. We've received support from the following committees for this project. And I believe that's it. Next slide. So thank you. We ask you with the Permanent Town Building, on behalf of the Permanent Town Building Committee, we ask everybody to support this project. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We have one question that's come in so far. I'll read it. The select board has in the past established a list of criteria to determine what articles should be on the warrant for a special town meeting. And recollection is that the large capital expenditures were to be presented to annual town meeting where the fiscal year budget is deliberated and debated, and when it's appropriate time for deliberation and debate on large capital expenditures with up to 600 voters in attendance. 12 million for a new municipal building is a large capital expenditure. Why didn't the select board save this article for the March 2023 annual town meeting per their guidelines?
I believe
So
Andrea
why
will
now?
answer- I believe Andrea will probably want to answer that.
I think that's coming to me. For several reasons is, I think, first of all, this project has been out there and has been pending now since 2015. It's been discussed, and Tom can answer this better than I can, but tens and tens of meetings have been held with this by the Permanent Town Building Committee, by the Select Board, and others to discuss it. That's the first reason. The second reason is one of the criteria to bring forward articles at special town meeting is timeliness. And we believe that this is a timeliness issue. We have staff and personnel who do not have adequate and appropriate offices. And in addition, as we continue to delay, if we continue to delay, given our economy today, costs are only going to increase and escalate as the timeline for pushing this out even further continues. So we would continue to see increased costs. The building has already increased in cost since it was first proposed. And for those reasons, the select board is bringing it forward at at a special town meeting.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. If there are, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We can try to get them answered for you right now. But seeing no other questions right now, we'll move on to the other big project, which Article 6, appropriate funding for the JV Fletcher Library expansion. And I believe we are going to have our library director, Ellen Rainville, speak to this. We also have with us tonight, Mary Ann Fleckner, who is chair of the library trustees. So welcome, both of you. We'll go get your presentation up on the screen.
Thank you.
And again, this will be the presentation you give at special town meeting, I believe.
Yes.
So.
And thank you, Mike, we will go through some of these slides rapidly. So this project as well is the conclusion of more than a decade worth of planning. Town meeting first voted on this project in 2012. From 2014 to 2016, the library had received a planning and design grant from the Board of Library Commissioners. I'll have you advance the slide, Mike, if you don't mind. And that period of time was planning, technical work, surveying, choosing sites, preparing for a large grant that then was submitted to the Board of Library Commissioners, our state agency, January of 2017. Here we are 5 years later, and we received notice 1 year earlier than anticipated in July. We now have until January 9th of 2023 for the town to accept and fund this grant. So you can please advance a slide. We are due $7.85 million from the Board of Library Commissioners to help us with this project. And I'll have you go one more slide forward. And these were the needs that we identified after almost 25 years in our most recent renovation addition that opened in 1988. Our children's room was inadequate. We didn't have sufficient study research space. We needed more community gathering and conference spaces. We do not have a family bathroom that can handle a stroller, a caregiver, and an infant. We are built too high and are now too crowded, and we are aiming for an energy efficient net zero building and a code compliant and safety compliant building. We don't have an elevator that can handle a gurney. We don't have compliant stairwells or fire suppression. So one more slide, please. For those of you that might think that the library is gone the way of the dinosaurs, we can tell you that Westford does not believe this. Of our 24,000 plus population, 19,000 plus have cards that are current. We have 1,439 checkouts a day, and that's 290 plus days a year. We have 152,000 hits on our website and over 7,600 attendees at our programs. All of our collections, when they're accessed, total over 460,000, and we're 1.4% of the local tax rate, which is 2 dimes and 3 pennies. When we use the Syracuse University value calculator on all of the services we provide for Westford, the Westford resident gets a $13.60 return on a $1 investment. Next slide, please. So we're very proud that over all the time of the library, dating back to 1797, when revolutionary men in Westford had just founded Westford Academy and went on to found the social library, we have always had a strong tradition of grants, benefaction, and gifts. The 1797 library was given to the town. The agricultural library was given to the town. Jonathan Barnum Fletcher gave 75% of the funds to build a new library on the Common in 1895. His great-granddaughter created a basement children's room in 1963. In both 69 and 79, we got federal funds for first a renovation addition and then a bookmobile. And the 1988 renovation edition got one of the first awards from the Mass Public Library Construction Grant Round. And this is another grant round that we're in. From 2007 through 2012, our wonderful friends of the library did a great deal of beautification. We also had help from the Capital Committee, but that was a wonderful refresh of the library. Here we are in 2022, and we are trying to get our next grant underway. So the next slide, please. So we'll just rapidly go through this. There is some confusion. The facade of the library, which is historic, we're in a historic district, it will remain the same. It faces Main Street and the Common. We've had a number of grants from the Community Preservation Committee to restore stained glass. The original terracotta, J.B. Fletcher, had Italian masons come and do the frieze work on the front of the library, the new Greek windows. So that remains the same. So you can see everything that is gray to the rear of this site plan is what will be added. As we go through these building plans, and I'll have you progress through the floors, Mike. The children's room here on the left in the tan triples, and we have a large meeting room. We don't often share this number, but we have had as many as 189 at Mother Goose time. That's a lot of squirming little bodies doing the hokey pokey, and that's almost a quorum for a special town meeting. So we know we'll use that space. If we could see the level 2, please. Almost all of level 2 is either purple stacks or blue study areas. We also have a teen tween space for the first time, and we're thrilled to be able to offer to that. When we hosted exam week for our teens at the Westford Academy and fed them endless pizza until we closed late at either 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., they told us in their surveys that we were the bomb.com. So level 3, please. Level 3 continues to have our historic Mary Atwood Hall on the 3rd floor. We have in the blue 2 more conference and board spots where smaller groups can reserve rooms. And then we have the same number of offices for our current administration. So when we look at this future building, we think we may only need to increase our custodial from 1.3 to 1.5. So if we can go ahead and proceed. So again, we finally have improved spaces for children, young adults, and teens, tweens. We centralize certain functions. We will have improved parking, and we'll have a much more flexible and responsive building for the future. Will be handicapped accessible and will meet the fire codes, the safety codes, and all of the other sustainability goals that the town has set forth. So one more, Mike. And the community does benefit. We do represent child literacy and pre-K learning in the town. We provide formal education support, but there are people in Westford who are homeschooling, tutoring. They're having independent schooling. We provide free lifelong learning. job seeking, our job seeking network, which started in 2009, the start of the pandemic. We never thought we would be supporting that weekly with free speakers for 12 years, but it has lasted that long. And now we're part of a regional network providing that. There'll be more conference, study, tutorial space. This will boost property values, and we'll be reclaiming our state taxes for reinvestment in our community. One more, Mike. So I'm going to just have you flip through the pictures. This is a wide angle view of walking in the library. Here you see the yellow brick back of the rear library. This is the reference floor. And here you see the site from the parking lot. This is the north side of the library, not the front of the library. So of course, our big issue now is sticker shock. We have learned that the town share of the new building cost will be 23.4 million. The MBLC grant is 7.8 million. We've committed to 1.3 million of private funds and CPA grants that we hope to get for historic portions of the building. So the cost for this is estimated at $159 on a median household valued at $660,500 or $3.05. I want to be exact, $3.05 a week, if that is your home value. And this can be smoothed into the tax rate because we are replacing old debt of at least 4 large projects that the town is paying off. And we need to be clear that the construction grant is not a percentage of our total costs. We don't go back to the bottom of the list. If we don't act and accept this grant, then we will be back to where we were in 2010 when we started planning this process. So that is this, and I have just a couple other slides if there are more questions.
Not any, there are no specific questions to the library project right now, but thank you very much for, and if anyone does have any library specific questions, please put them in the chat. The one question that has been asked is to talk about the ballot questions and the process of how these will be voted on and the process of it. So I believe we are going to take a little break in the motions right now and address those issues. So first we will have a presentation about the debt issue with Darren O'Donnell, Finance Director, and Christine Collins, our tax collector. So Dan and Christine, I think you have a presentation that can give people information, and then we will talk about the balloting and the ballot question as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we do have a presentation here about the pending town projects, how we're considering funding them, and the financial impact of all these projects together. So what we have is the analysis of our projected debt service costs, which includes the 51 Main Street construction and the JV Fletcher Library expansion coming to the October special town meeting. And we have the Blanchard Roof MSBA project coming to the March annual town meeting. In this, we also have a placeholder for the school administration offices of $5 million, which is just a placeholder at this point. The feasibility study is still underway, so we don't have a final number on that or a plan yet. It's just to let people know it's coming. We also have $1 million contingency as a measurement tool, so we can display the impact of adding $1 million in excluded debt on an individual household. So as a community, we do have debt service goals. As stated in the select board budget policy and as recommended by Standard & Poor's, we should allocate between 7 and 10% of our operating budget towards debt service. It shows we're investing in our community, actively managing our capital, and it's just considered sound business practice. Now, we have 2 types of debt that we want to discuss briefly. The first is excluded debt, which is typically for larger projects and is excluded from restrictions of Prop 2.5. Meaning the amounts for the annual debt payment are added on top of the tax base. Our most recent debt exclusion vote was taken for the Fletcher Fire Station on Boston Road. So non-excluded debt is typically used for smaller and more frequent projects. This type of debt is absorbed within the tax levy and it competes against other operational needs. So some examples of non-excluded debt are here. You can see the WA bleachers, dump truck, and so on. All these projects listed on the left have been permanently bonded. The ones on the right are not permanently bonded yet, are mostly still underway. So we have some updated information from when we first presented this at the August 9th Select Board meeting. The first is the anticipated value of a single family home. It's expected to increase from $551,000 in FY22 to $660,500 in FY23. And I will have those numbers finalized at the November 15th tax classification hearing. So overall, as a town, our value increased by 12.4% this past fiscal year. Now, for the new center building, we're recommending a project cost of $12,010,000, as Tom had discussed before. However, we're recommending issuing or appropriating $1 million in free cash to help offset the cost of the building. We did this with the Boston Road Fire Station, and it worked out well. So we're being consistent with our methodology here. So the $1 million free cash will save that in principal over the 20-year loan plus $420,000 in payments. So, and free cash was just certified at 6.2 million. So we do have more on hand in this fiscal year than we did back in FY15 when the fire station was approved. So the median tax bill for the 51 Main Street, again, that's a house assessed at $660,500, will be $81.59 in FY24. And that declines over time as the tax base grows, as the debt payments are spread over a wider base. Then we have the library expansion. As Ellen just said, it's 32.5 million, and she had just gone through the funding sources of the 23.4 million in bonds and 7.8 million from the state, and so on. The annual debt payment is expected to be $1,659,000 per year, and that's starting in FY27. We don't expect the project to be done until just before then, and then we don't typically permanently bond projects till they're completed, so we don't bond more than what we need. We will have short-term interest payments along the way. However, in FY27, the median home, again, 660,000, will be assessed at approximately $158.61. And again, that will decline over time. And as Ellen mentioned, we are seeking ARPA funding from the state to help offset some of the increased cost of these projects. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christine.
Okay, so this slide is showing our debt summary history. You can see that it goes back about 10 years ago, starting in FY12. In FY12, our debt as a percent of the budget was 9.77%, $6.5 million. Over the next, 10 years or more, it continued to decline. You can see that it declined all the way down. And in FY19, it went back up a little bit. That was the year that we added the fire station, the Fletcher Fire Station, to the bonds. So that kind of leveled off our percent of budget, our debt as a percent of budget. Next slide. So this is FY12 remains on this slide just as a reference point. You can see that this year we're in FY23. And in FY23, 3 schools and the highway garage are going to have their last debt service payments. Those are all excluded debt projects. So on the top line, you can see, or the top line is the operating budget. The second line is the excluded debt line item. You can see that in FY12, it was at 6.6 million. In FY23, it was at 4.3 million. And in FY24, it drops down to 1.5 million. On the very bottom line of the slide, you can see that when that happens, our debt as a percent of budget will drop down to 4.75%. So this is what it would look like if we did no new projects. Next slide. This slide is demonstrating a few things. So you can see that our excluded debt in FY24 without any new projects, this is our existing excluded debt, is $1,486,250. Dan mentioned that the debt service on the 51 Main Street building is going to be about $781,700. And the debt service, the annual debt service cost starting in FY27 for the library is $1,659,000. The Blanchard Middle School roof, which is a project that's estimated to be about $5 million with 30% reimbursement. So we would be bonding $3.5 million, is included in these estimates. The school administration offices at about $5 million, which is a complete just placeholder at this point. That's also in here. So all of these things we are projecting so that you can see what the impact will be on not only on the excluded debt, but in the overall debt. Let me just make sure I covered everything on that slide. Hold on. Okay, yep, I think we did. So next slide, please. So what this slide is showing is starting back on 2012, and you can see that back in 2012, we had our highest debt service costs for this period. This is for excluded debt. This is our excluded debt history. When you get to 2019, you can see that light orange section of the bar. That represents the fire station when it came online. Now, one thing I do want to point out about this, when the fire station came online, we asked our financial advisor to structure the debt so that we would have smaller payments at the beginning of the loan when we were still paying off all the schools, and then larger payments after the schools were all paid off. So you can see how that little light orange line is a little shorter in those first few years, and then it grows a little larger in 2024 out to 2029. Up above on the 2027 through 2029, you can see that large green area, and that's the JV Fletcher Library when it comes on. We would expect to do the exact same thing that we did for the Fletcher Fire Station for the library, that we would be able to ask the financial advisor to structure our debt so that some of that debt was pushed off into the years when the fire station was all paid for and the senior center was all paid for. So we have an opportunity to smooth that out. Next slide, please. So let's see. So here we can see that if we were to do all of these projects, and it kind of smooths out our percent of budget. So you can see that in FY23, it's about 7%. It's going down a little bit in these out years, but we will have other debt service for ongoing capital needs, like Dan mentioned, out of the operating budget, that will help to, to fill that in. Next slide, please. So this slide is the one that is showing the cost on a household for the projects. So the top line here, impact on tax rate, these are the existing projects and what it's costing, what we're projecting it will cost for the years in this view. When the center building comes on at 51 Main, we're expecting that the FY24 amount would be $81.59, and that it would decline a little bit every year as the tax base grows. The JV Fletcher Library, we're showing the bonds would be issued around FY27, and that without any smoothing would be $158.61. We do expect to smooth it. So if you look on the bottom line in the bold print, the total line in the bold print in FY27 for the existing debt, the 51 Main Street, library expansion, Blanchard roof, school administration offices estimated at $5 million and $1 million contingency. The cost is being estimated about for excluded debt on the tax bill for a $660,000 home at about $402 annually. Since we intend to smooth that library debt out, I would expect that number to be more around 330 or 340. Okay, next slide, please. So our goal, as it has always been, is to plan carefully and to be very deliberate about this. We have an opportunity here. This is an ideal time to consider new excluded debt with the 3 schools in the highway garage coming off of the tax rate, dropping down our debt burden. So this is the perfect time for us to consider replacing that debt with projects that have been very well vetted and discussed and looked into. As time goes on, we'll continue to work collaboratively to plan for the capital needs of the town as we are doing now, and just trying to be very deliberate about it. So are there any questions?
I thank you so much for that. It was really, really detailed. Is this presentation, I assume, available online as well? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the...
Make sure. Great. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any questions specific to the presentation right now. I'll keep an eye open for them. But I think another part of this then is the ballot questions and how that process works. So I'd like to invite Patty Doobie, our town clerk, to talk to us about the role of town meeting and also the election coming up in November and how those work together.
Hi, thank you very much, Laura. Nice to be here again and not talking about precincts. The ballot question is actually quite simple. And the process, it needs to pass both town meeting and at the polls. We are going to be voting on this obviously next Monday at town meeting, and the November 8th special election for the town, that we're doing it concurrently with the state election. So you're going to have two ballots when you go to the polls, and they have to pass both times. If they do not, okay, so say for instance, it passes at town meeting, but it doesn't pass at the ballot box, we have 90 days from town meeting to either call another election to do it again. If it's the other way around where it didn't pass at town meeting, yet it did pass at the ballot, then we'd have to have a town meeting within 90 days. So in other words, you've got 90 days to get through two things positively. And that's it in a nutshell. I hope I
Is that
properly.
now, is that for both the 51 Main Street and the library both have that 90-day window, or is that just for the library because of the time limit?
I believe
involved?
that it's for both of them, actually.
Okay, so you'll be voting for two things. Oh, sorry, Ellen.
No, Patty, I just have to remind the voters that we must get an answer to the Board of Library Commissioners by January 9th of 2023. So my calendar isn't clicking through fast enough, but I think that probably falls within the 90 days. So we probably have fewer than 90 days for the library project.
That's very true. You missed it by about 10 days. We got to move along if for some reason we need to do things again. So
I see. So, but you have a second chance at both things. If one doesn't pass and the other does, then
if we want to pursue it.
Okay, and we have a question about which vote is 2/3 or majority. So I believe both of the town meeting articles, according to the motions document, are both 2/3 majority votes.
Right, because it's money.
Yeah. So it would require. Oh, Dan, yes.
Yeah, all borrowing articles are always a 2/3 vote.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any other. I think these are the only two on the warrant that are 2/3. So that's where the clickers might come in handy. Oh no, there's another one, another zoning article. That's zoning. So thank you, Patty. And then reminder to people that there will be early voting for this election, and you will get, if you do vote by mail, you also, I assume, get 2 ballots in the mail.
Yes, if you just give me 1 second, I would like to mention, we have distinguished between the ballots, and thank you for letting me do this. The local election is going to have neon green stickers all over it. So take your ballot for the election and put it in that envelope, which will be opened on election day and counted at that point. The state ballot will look very similar. But what I'm getting a question from Jeff Goodwin, sorry. And so you will get 2, it's 2 separate mailings. Please put the ballots back in the separate mailings. You can drop them off at the drop box if you like. You can mail them back. It's postage paid. Make sure you get it in the mail in time. The state election, as long as it's postmarked November 8th and I receive it by November 12th, I can count it. The town election, I must have it November 8th by 8 p.m. And let me look at Jeff's question again, because I think that he wanted me to answer it. No, that isn't it. I'm sorry. I guess it came to me personally. And apparently I'm not the modern age. I'm not sure. I'll get to Jeff after.
Okay. We do have another question. How much will the average homeowner's taxes go up over the next several years in addition to the excluded debt mentioned. Christine.
It's hard to answer that question for everybody. When the values on the homes go up, as they were expecting that it's going to get approved, that the average home value went from 551 to 660, because of the way the formula works for Proposition 2.5, we're anticipating a drop in the tax rate. So the value went way up. That doesn't mean you're going to be paying way more, because then the tax rate comes down to offset it, so that we're not charging people more than 2.5% due to Prop 2.5. Maybe Dan will want to correct me if I say anything wrong, but so we see typically just a few percentage points of an increase on an annual basis due to 2.5. The time when that is not true is if your property goes up more than the average in town. So if the average properties go up by a certain percentage and yours goes up by more than that, either because of the neighborhood you're in or the style of the property or something like that is going on, that isn't true for all properties in town, your property could go up a little bit more. So it's very hard to estimate, how much. I think that as far as historical increases, you could expect it to stay about the same as it's been. And then the debt that's falling off due to the schools being paid off and the highway garage being paid off is very likely going to be replaced by these two projects. So I don't believe there is going to be a giant spike due to these projects, but there will not be the fall due to the things falling off. So I hope that explained it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think sometimes you hear Prop 2.5, you think it's going to go up by 2.5% every year, but that's the maximum I guess it's allowed to. So
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any more questions on that. Thank you to everyone for that additional information on the debt service and the balloting. Remember to check out the town website if you have additional questions or would like to know more. Okay, so we are going to move on then back to the warrant. Article 7, we're going to reduce the amount raised by taxes in fiscal year 2023. So Dan, can you tell us about this motion?
Sure. So this is the article that we bring back to every special town meeting in October to balance the budget. So in this case, what we're asking to do is to apply $150,000 from recreation enterprise retained earnings to fund the revenue gap that they currently have. So the select board in their September meeting appropriated $167,128 in ARPA funds to help offset this gap. 150 will completely close it. So recreation is one of those departments that was very impacted by the COVID pandemic, and they're slowly building back up their membership. Actually, they built it up pretty well last year. They jumped from about $200,000 in revenue to over $900,000 last year. However, we still just have to close this small gap. We're working on this in future years to help make sure that we don't have to keep bringing this back to future town meetings to adjust the funding.
Okay, so it's from recreation funds for paying for recreation related funds. So
that's correct. Yep.
Sort of staying in the same department there. Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions on that one. Next, we're going to move on to Article 8, which is to decrease the membership of the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. And Andrea is going to talk about that.
Right. We're seeking to reduce the Affordable Housing Trust Committee wants to reduce its membership of regular members from 11 to 9, basically because at 11 there have been difficulties in obtaining quorum that would allow the committee to act. We have to bring this to town meeting under state law, the state law that enables affordable housing trust committees to be formed in town and to act, requires that its membership compilation be approved by town meeting. So that's why we're bringing this back to town meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on to Article 9. This is a zoning bylaw amendment, and it is to amend the zoning bylaw section 3.3 for accessory dwelling units. And we have with us Jeff Morissette, who is the Director of Land Use Management in Westford, who's going to talk about this.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening. And first thing is ADUs, or accessory dwelling unit. What exactly is that? So it is a dwelling unit on a lot that is incidental or subordinate to the principal dwelling unit. And while many of us think of this as an in-law apartment, there's no requirement that the occupants of the ADU or the primary dwelling unit must be somehow related. Currently, a special permit process from the Zoning Board of Appeals is necessary to authorize an ADU, and the proposed amendments would not change that. They do propose a number of significant changes though. So first and foremost, right now, it would allow for a transfer of a special permit upon a change of ownership. Right now, under our bylaw, the permit terminates when there's a new owner. And it takes about more than $1,000 and about 3 months to go through that public hearing process to get a new special permit and record it at the Registry of Deeds. And so we think that a second public hearing process to simply maintain the status quo is unnecessary, and it doesn't serve the public interest. So right now, if a new owner comes in, they propose no changes to the ADU and they just want to use it as was originally approved by the board, they still need a new special permit. And both the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals agree that that's an unnecessary step and it's really not in the public interest. So it's time, money, uncertainty, and applicants are at risk to possible appeal. It also creates a lot of havoc for buyers and sellers and their closing attorneys because there is this period of limbo where the ADU is really not quite valid. If successful, this amendment would allow for an administrative process to transfer the special permit from one owner to the next within 90 days without requiring a new special permit or a public hearing process. The second major change is to simplify the ADU standards by replacing area calculations with a flat square footage allowance of 900 square feet for the ADU. Under the current bylaw, the ADU cannot exceed 33% of the gross floor area of the principal structure, and it cannot create more than a 15% increase of the gross floor area of the structure. So a couple of points. We did some research for the ADUs that have been granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals since 2015. And they average approving 5 ADUs per year. And the average size of those ADUs was just under 900 square feet, about 894 square feet. More than half of those ADUs that were approved required variance relief related to dimensional standards, such as the 33% or the 15% that I mentioned. The 900 square foot limit is also consistent with the definition of accessory dwelling unit in the general laws in Chapter 40A, Section 1A. And one of those special permits that was granted, it was for a 500 square foot accessory dwelling unit that needed variance relief because the primary dwelling unit was a very modest size. And currently there are legitimate ways for applicants to circumvent the 15% increase in gross floor area. And some of the applicants have even put additions onto their primary dwelling unit to make it larger so as to have a larger accessory dwelling unit just to make the numbers work. So another purpose of the bylaw is to simply state more of the purposes and intent behind the bylaw. That can become important when it comes time for writing decisions or if a decision is appealed. The other thing that we want to do is there is a requirement that an additional parking space must be constructed for the ADU and that it must be constructed of the same materials as the existing driveway. So a strict interpretation could require that other parking spaces be constructed even if there's already adequate existing parking on site. It could also require that the ADU space be paved unnecessarily. So this could result in some additional clearing of trees or additional impervious area or land disturbance. And so overall, we think these proposed amendments, they're reasonable. They simplify the permitting process. It's a benefit to both current residents and future residents. And it frees up both board and staff resources, and it would even save some trees. So we ask for your support at town meeting for Article 9, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I had one question. I noticed it said that certification is required for one of the 2 dwelling units. So does that mean that a given lot can only have one ADU associated with it?
Typically, yes, that would need excessive variance relief to have more than one accessory dwelling unit. And the 6-month provision, it's intended to make sure that the owner of the property lives in either the principal or the accessory dwelling unit for a minimum of 6 months of the year.
Okay, so they can live in either, but okay.
Either one, correct.
I see, gotcha. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for
Thank you.
explaining that. I know it's a lot of changes to the bylaw, so I encourage you, if you're curious, to look at the details of what changed. Great. So, and I do want to note that that is a 2/3 majority vote required, I believe, because it is a bylaw change, or specifically a zoning bylaw change. So, next we move on to general bylaw amendments, and this is Article 10, which is to amend Chapter 48 of the general bylaws to change the name of the Tax Possession Sale Committee to the Tax Possession Disposition Committee. It's a mouthful. Andrea, can you tell us why this change is being made?
Sure.
Or proposed?
This is actually coming from the committee itself. It's their request, really just for a nomenclature change. They do more than just sell property, okay? And the name change really just simply reflects that, in addition to, excuse me, selling property, that they dispose of it, in other ways as well, whether it's by gift, whether it's somebody purchasing it, whether it's easements or whatever. And it just, they feel more accurately reflects what they do. And other than that, there is no other change.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, then that, I don't see any questions on that. And so that takes us to the last article, which is Article 11, which is to authorize the select board to sell 2 parcels of land on Pine Tree Trail and Byrne Avenue. And so I believe Eric, who's our assistant town manager, is going to speak to this, and I believe also has a map to show us where these parcels are.
Great. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, great. So great. Thanks for having us tonight. So this request is to authorize the select board to sell 2 parcels of land on Byrne Ave and Pine Tree Trail. Just for sake of direction, we provided the map. You can see off the east side of Nab Lake. These are 2 very small parcels. This came up because one of the neighboring property owners reached out to the town manager's office inquiring about the possible sale of the parcels. Our town manager did reach out to all of our department heads to ensure we didn't have a municipal purpose for these parcels, and we did not. So we brought this to the select board, who were in support of placing an article on the warrant to comply with Chapter 30B for the disposition of these parcels.
Great. You tell us the rough size of how big, like in terms of either acreage or square footage they are?
Jeff, you wouldn't happen to have the exact square footage, would you?
Or just roughly, like they look pretty small.
I don't have the exact square footage. I believe they're generally in the area of perhaps 5,000 square feet or less.
Okay, quite great.
Perhaps 3,000.
Okay, thank you very much. And that takes us to the end of the warrant. I don't see any other questions, but I would like to thank all of the town officials and the committee members for participating tonight. We couldn't do this without you, and we really appreciate taking your time at night to come and educate us about all of the motion articles. We'd like to thank WestfordCAT for recording it, and thank you, the voters, for attending and participating in the most democratic form of government, town meeting. We hope to see you all Monday, October 17th at 7 p.m. at the main gym of Westford Academy. Thank you and good night.